every time that the Nazis would meet, our guys would go in and beat the shit out of these Nazi bastards. Our guys would go in with baseball bats, monkey wrenches, brass knuckles, stink bombs to throw into the place so when they come running out, our guys were waiting there.
What good did the mob do and what bad?
Instant justice. You went to the powers to be because if you went through the system did shit for you. Somebody tried to rape the guy's sister. It goes to the bosses. Bosses, oh, he'll take care of that. Now, if you went through the system with the prosecution, the lawyers, it's an expediency. What you can learn from an old gangster, you can never learn if you went to Harvard, Princeton. You have these geniuses that go to the best universities, and they can't do shit.
What was the ugliest part?
You used to send 2 guys to kill and 2 guys to do the burial. Why? So the 2 guys they killed never knew where the body was.
Yeah.
Can I tell you who the biggest organized crime is in the entire world?
Who?
The government.
My guest today is a former gangster, author, entrepreneur, father, and a grandpa, and he wrote a book called The Chronicles of the Last Jewish Gangster, From Meyer to Myron. Myron Sugerman, thank you for being a guest on Valuetainment.
Okay, nice to be here, and thank you very much for having me.
Yes, so look, I've interviewed a lot of Italian mobsters, gangsters, attorneys, you know, some gangsters from UK, we've had a lot of them, but never Jewish mob. So if you don't mind educating myself and the audience on the history of the Jewish mob.
Okay, I'll be glad to. So the Jewish mob basically starts at the time of the large immigration from East Europe in the late 1880s, 1890s. And of course, poverty, they come into the United States, they move into the cities, and they form the ghettos of the United States, whether it's Baltimore, whether it's Boston, New York, Brooklyn, Detroit, Chicago, Cleveland. And the original Jewish gangster was really it was brutal. He was a brute. He was brutal. In fact, there's a book that I read many, many years ago that said 25% of the prisoners in the New York prison system were Jews. What were the crimes? A lot of the crimes were violence.
What year was this?
Probably at the turn of the 20th century.
Got it.
All right. And it was the name of the book was called The Rise and Fall of the Jewish Gangster, Jewish Mobster, something like that. The interesting part about it, Patrick, was that they were involved in all forms of shakedowns, violence, beatings, murders, and prostitution.
Okay.
All right. The majority of the prostitute in that time were Jewish women. They'd come, they couldn't find their husbands, and the pimps would be waiting for them on the piers.
Majority of the prostitutes in the 20s were Jewish women.
Not 20s, late 1890s.
1890s.
1890s,
Okay.
1900s.
Got it. Okay.
So it was really brutal crime. Now, the generation that comes up that was either born in the United States or had recently immigrated from Europe, let's say, for example, Meyer Lansky, Benny Siegel, Lepke Bullcoulter, My Father's World, and so forth. Some of them were born here, and some were born on the other side and came as young kids. All right? And I'm talking now post-1900. So these kids start as gangs, and what they want, it's control of territory and neighborhoods and so forth, and the control of the ghetto. They had a responsibility as well, and that was to protect the ghetto from the being invaded and beat up by kids from other ethnicities. And so the pushcart vendors and the storekeepers, they would depend on these young kids to defend the neighborhood. The young kids were responsible to take care of the fathers, the uncles, the grandparents, the cousins, and everybody That was the responsibility to
The
take
other
care
way
of
around. Instead of parents, it was the kids.
the kids that
Okay.
took care. Very good point. So, so when there was a very, very well-known gangster from Newark. It's amazing. If I'll say to people, who's Abner Longies Willman? If you didn't come from Jersey, you never heard of him. He was on an equal level with Meyer Lansky, Benny Siegel, right? And with Lepke Bullcoulter and Murder Incorporated and so forth. But we'll get into that. So his name was Longy. And where did the name Longy came from when the old-timers were being invaded by Italians or Irish or other ethnicities. They would holler in Yiddish, rift for the longer, call the long one, longer. So from the name Longer came the name Longy, Abe Longy Zwillman. And he was 6'2", good-looking guy, waxed rich during the Prohibition period, became known as the Al Capone of New Jersey. 75-80% of the alcohol that came into Jersey came in under his rule.
Again, this is still in the 1890s.
No, this now becomes the time of the Prohibition.
Got it. Okay.
Those kids that were gangs evolved into businessmen. But we'll get, I just want to, before we get to anybody, as the young kids by the 1920, at the time of Prohibition, because the law starts in 1920, you have the old-timers, one of them in particular, Arnold Rothstein. Arnold Rothstein was the brain. Now, the brain was allegedly the guy that fixed the 1919 World Series together with an ex-Jewish prize fighter by the name of Abe Attell.
This is White Sox against the Reds. They call it the Black Sox or something like that. Yeah.
Right. It was the Chicago Black Sox scandal.
Yep.
We're living in a day and age, if I tell people what I'm going to tell you now, they're surprised. But we had thousands and thousands of professional prize fighters. And up until the middle of the 1930s, 1/3 of the champions of the world were Jewish.
Up until the 1930s, 1/3 of the prize champions were Jewish.
Of the world were Jewish.
So very different Jewish reputation then than it is today.
Completely.
Night and day.
Completely.
Feared, respected, moneymakers, racketeering, the original mobs. And it almost seems like when you study the history, they almost took in and they shared their secrets and they trade secrets with the Italian and the Irish mob.
So we're going to talk about Arnold Rothstein. So Arnold Rothstein, he didn't come from the ghetto. He came from a middle-class Jewish family, very well respected, and he himself wanted to be an outlaw. He's the one that actually, in fact, is responsible for the modern-day mob. He was the original money guy for bootlegging in New York. It meets, we need young kids to protect our convoys. So go to the gangs in the ghettos, and if he spotted somebody with potential leadership, like Meyer Lansky or like Lucky Luciano, he schooled them. And he showed them, you're going to make more money with this than you're going to do with this. Stop being thugs. Now you got an opportunity to make a lot of money through Prohibition. Everybody wanted whiskey. Everybody wanted alcohol. So he becomes the father of the modern mob. He got killed because he welched on a card game where he claimed that the game was fixed. They shot him. He died with the name of a shooter on his lips. He was true to that code. He died, and now you had the new guys take over. The connection between the Jews and the Italians, I was talking to this young fella that you have here today, and I explained the common interest was making money. Lucky Luciano had the brains to see that money could be made with the Jews. And Meyer Lansky understood we can make money with the Italians instead of knocking our brains out with each other. Let's do it. The Italians, however, up until 1930, 1931, they were controlled by two forces. It was called the Costa Mamari Wars. The wars between Joe the Boss Masseria and Salvatore Maranzano. They fought over the control of the Young Turks. Young Turks being Lucky Luciano, Frank Costello, Joe Adonis. And so the competition was between those two forces from the old Black Hand. They were xenophobic, meaning that they wouldn't, we're from Sicily, we're from this part of Sicily. We don't want to even do business with guys from Calabria, from Naples. Business with Jews, forget about it. Forget about it. We don't do business with Jews. They were xenophobic.
Can you give me an idea for us today? Okay,
Yeah.
so we're not there at that time. You come from, you said January 12th to 1938?
38.
Okay, so you've been around the block. You have this. The question I want to ask you is the following. So you say Jews and Italians. There was some friction between the two. Who would you compare that to today? Is there a comparison to make that to today?
Yeah. Over the period of post-war World War II, you had competition, and it's very interesting. Good question. You had competition between Cubans, where they were the new boys on the block post-Castro, post-Batista. So when the Cuban mob came here, it was formed. They called themselves La Corporación. They went toe-to-toe with the Italians over the number holes and over the numbers business in New York, to the extent that they were burning down each one's number holes. And then ultimately, there was a declaration. They sat down, they had to sit together. The boss of the Cubans was named Jose Miguel Batley. And he sat with Fat Tony, and they worked out a peace agreement. The Albanians and the Italians. But it's always the Italians, the Russians and the Italians. But ultimately, the Italians, they have the structure and the power. Whether it's Puerto Ricans, whether it's Dominicans, and so forth and so forth.
During that time when Lucky, there's Costello himself banned, Meyer, they're sitting there and, Rothstein's kind of giving them a, formula. Here's how you do it. Here's how you make your money, and don't let the two.
So in order to do that, they had to kill Joe the Boss Masseria, and they had to kill Salvatore Maranzano. So the first one they took out was Joe the Boss Masseria in Coney Island. 1 Jew and 3 Italians. Bugsy Siegel, together with 3 Italians, went and did the hit before Joe the Boss Masseria could eat that pasta fazola bianca. They ruined his appetite. They killed him.
Yeah.
Then they had to take care of Salvatore Maranzano. In that particular case, Lucky Luciano, and it's a good story. He goes to Meyer Lansky and he says to him, Meyer, give me 4 of your guys. Give me 4 Jews. Because Salvatore Maranzano never recognized 4 Jews coming in dressed as IRS agents. All right? So Meyer Lansky's using 4 Jews. Bugsy. I think one of the guys from Dutch Schultz's outfit. I always said Louis Rush from downtown. And the 4th guy was Sam Red Levine. All right? That was Meyer Lansky's favorite shooter. Now, Sam Red Levine was a bit of a religious. He was a bit of a religious Jew.
Yeah.
He wore a kippah, all right, ate kosher, and used to tell Meyer Lansky, "Don't give me an assignment on Shabbat unless it's absolutely necessary." He wouldn't kill anybody on Saturday unless it had to be taken care of. All right. So after they killed those 2 guys, emerges 1930-31, the commission and the new crime, the 5 families and so forth and so forth. That's where Lucky Luciano really gets the respect of everybody.
To bring the 5. So
because in fact, it was Joe the Boss Masseria that kidnapped Salvatore Lacania. It takes him to his warehouses and threatens him that if you don't come with me, I'm going to kill you. And Lucky Luciano, it was the name Salvatore Lacani at the time, the original name of Lucky Luciano, says, no, I'm not going with you. They sliced him up, left him for dead, and that's how he got the name Lucky. He was lucky to survive. That's when he went to Myron, to Benny, to Bugsy, and says, guys, God bless you. We'll never succeed as long as we're under the limitations of the repression of these old xenophobic dinosaurs. Got to get rid of them. So they got rid of them. And that's where the Jews and the Italians had a good understanding, an excellent understanding, that we're going to cooperate. And cooperation means more money, all right? Because violence is no good. Violence interferes. That's why when I was telling you the story between the Italians and the Cubans, see, this Jose Miguel Batley was a hero in the Bay of Pigs. He was one of the commanding officers of that unit 4863 or whatever that was part of the invasion of Bay of Pigs. He was a CIA guy. So when he came back to the United States, the deal was negotiated so that money and medicine went to Cuba to release the guys that were locked up, the prisoners on the Bay of Pigs. Jose Miguel comes back and forms what's known as La Corporación, the corporation, all right? And they start getting aggressive in terms of putting out buying the number holes. Number holes meaning the illegal lottery, all right? Now, my involvement, my friendship was with everybody, because I was the founding father of the gambling machine business. I brought back the slot machines from the time that LaGuardia knocked them out in 1941, eliminated Meyer Lansky and Frank Costello. I, in 1977, started to put out the first slot machines again. I was a pioneer. So people say to me, where did you get the idea? Where did you get the balls to do something like that? I said, well, I used to go all over the world. I've been to 70 countries. I speak every language on the face of the earth. And I did business all over the world, which I learned from my father. My father was in the jukebox and vending and cigarette machine business going back prior to 1938. His original partner was Doc Statcher and Abe Green. Doc Statcher was the original partner with that gentleman I mentioned before, Longies Willman. Right? By the way, Longies Willman waxed extremely rich during the time of Prohibition, and he was one of the big financiers of Hollywood movies. He had a love affair with Jean Harlow. He made a great success out of Jean Harlow. She was the Marilyn Monroe of her time. So Doc Statcher was the original partner of my father, and Longies Willman, they split it. Longie took the cigarette machine business, and my father's was the jukebox business. And how did Longie take we had Murder Incorporated. See, people just, I'm sure a lot of people are going to be watching this and say, I never knew all of this stuff. The Jews were that tough. We had as many shooters and maybe more than the Italians. We had so many guys that were prize fighters. Another thing, in the 1930s, all right, this is a fantastic story, and nobody knows about it. With the rise of nationalist, socialist ideology in Germany, they come to the United States. We had a guy by the name of Fritz Kuhn, K-U-H-N, all right? He declares himself as the Hitler of America. And he starts to rally and bring together the recent immigrants that came post-World War I after the defeat of the Kaiser Wilhelm. We had a tremendous amount of Germans that came to the United States. Newark, New Jersey was originally a large German population. We had beer gardens. They called themselves the Brown Shirts, all right? And
Brown Shirts.
The Brown Shirts.
Brown Shirts.
All right? And it was called the Bund, B-U-N-D, which means the organization in German. And they would start beating up on Jews. My father was part of an organization called the Minutemen. The Minutemen were all under the supervision, or all under the administration of Longies Willman. And they formed an organization called the Minutemen, which in a minute's notice, just like in the Revolutionary War, you would have men available in a matter of a minute to go fight the British. Our guys went to fight the American Nazi Party. There's a book called the Nazis in Newark, written by a dear friend of mine, Warren Grover, that relates exactly every time that the Nazis would meet, our guys would go in and beat the shit out of these Nazi bastards, all right? And this went on throughout the entire 1930s. Meyer Lansky took on the Nazis in Yorkville up on First Avenue and 86th Street. Beat the shit out of them up there. It went on in Minneapolis, in Chicago.
Define beat the shit out of them. What does that mean? What does beat the shit out of them?
Our guys would go in with baseball bats. They'd go in with monkey wrenches, with brass knuckles, stink bombs to throw into the place, so when they come running out, our guys were waiting there. All right? Rising anti-Semitism today, people say, oh my God, you know. But in that time, Jews were responding to it. The mob in Minneapolis, Dave Berman, Herman Pastor, Sam Turan, wherever the Silver Shirts, another anti-Semitic organization, would meet, our guys were there to beat the shit out of them, all right? In Chicago, there was a very famous prize fighter, Triple Crown champion, hero at Guadalcanal by the name of Barney Ross. Very great American hero. Fought at Guadalcanal when he was in his 30s. He was a hero at Guadalcanal. In the time of the Nazis, they fought the anti-Semites, the Jew haters in Chicago. One of the guys that fought together with Barney Ross was Jacob Rubenstein. Some people say, who the hell was Jacob Rubenstein? So let me make it easy for you. Jack Ruby. There's a son of a bitch, Jack Ruby. He was a Jewish hero, all right? Bit of a new crazy guy, but...
he was a Jewish hero, Jack Ruby.
He fought together with all the Jews to defend against anti-Semites.
How different was the Jewish community in the 30s versus today? So when you're hearing it, hey, anti-Semite, who you guys are going out there fighting, beating the shit out of everybody, versus today, you hear the same message and criticism. How different are the communities between those 80 years?
Well, I think the economics was so much different. Today, for example, the attacks on anti-Semitism today in the United States are against identifiable Jews, meaning people that cover their heads, black suits, beards. They're identifiable, and they're in the inner cities. They're sharing geography, all right? Let's say whether it's Williamsburg, whether it's Crown Heights, Borough Park, and so forth and so forth. They're being attacked. The Jews in the suburbs haven't really felt it yet, all right? Because nobody's going into the wealthy suburban neighborhoods and attacking Jews there, all right? There's the anti-Semitism. Hasn't spread to that point. The question you're asking me about 80 years ago is that everybody was sharing territory in those days, all right? So whether you were identifiable or not, you knew that this was a Jewish neighborhood, and there was the question of, well, we're going to go in there and we're going to attack Jews, all right? And so there was a need for that kind of defense.
Going back to the names you mentioned, and by the way, I want you to finish the story about yourself in 1977 when you said you were doing the slot machines, and that's kind of how you brought it up. You were a pioneer. How big did that get, and what kind of money were you making at the peak?
It was so huge. It was so gigantic. They should build a statue for me because I made a lot of guys rich, all right? Zillions of guys. What we were doing was we started with slot machines and evolved into video poker machine. And that just broke everything open. And when the technology changed and we had a bill acceptor that you could start putting 1s, 5s, 10s, 20s. Oh,
That's
my God.
That's a big deal at that time.
God.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So You didn't have to go collecting coins. You were collecting now bills. So we calculate that at a certain point in history, there were no fixed figures, but between the fellows that were manufacturing, supplying, and there could have been 200,000 machines throughout the entire city of New York. And again, people say, oh, I never saw it. Well, how are you going to see it? Because if you're living on Park Avenue, you're not going to see it. But if you were living in Washington Heights, you walked into every bodega, had slot machines in the back rooms.
200,000. Wow.
We figured 200,000 and figure each machine averaged approximately $500 per week per machine. So take 200,000 machines and multiply it by $500. Now, 50% went to the store owner and 50% went to the operator. That business flourished for years, but until it became too competitive. As it became super competitive, that's where the conflicts began.
So that's 100 million a week. 50 million went to the store. 50 million. You mean to tell me you guys were doing 50 a week?
So that was between a million, endless number of operators. I wasn't the only operator. I was the grandfather of it all right? But everybody went into it. Italians, Dominicans, Puerto Ricans.
I got what you're saying.
Russians,
Okay.
Israelis.
Got it.
Everybody.
So everybody was kind of sharing that together, the 50 a week that was coming in. How much of that 50 was going to you at that time?
Oh, probably maybe. Well, I had New York, I would say, between sales operation, over 100,000
a week.
Yeah.
So you're making 100,000 a week in the 80s.
Yeah.
And what's your life like at the time? I mean, listen, even off camera, I watch you. You have charisma. You're charming. You're mad. You can use the words. You're very well spoken. So how was your life like?
So I'm a bit of a unique kind of a character because I never went higher than in terms of the kind of lifestyle and no country club, none of this. I'm a street guy. I'm a educated street guy, one of the most educated in terms of everything, Jewish history, world of events, current, and so forth and so forth. So I pursued a lot of that as far as life concerned.
But you were not living a lavish lifestyle.
No,
ladies,
not at
the
all.
party, and all that stuff wasn't you.
I'm married to an old school Jewish girl from Buenos Aires whose family was from Poland. And if we would have told her, come here today, Patrick is going to interview you, she'd run to the other side of America.
Why is that? She's old school. She wants nothing.
She don't want none of this world.
Was she a strong personality, though?
Very strong.
Okay.
She worked in a slot machine business in Buenos Aires as the bookkeeper. That's how I met her.
Got it. So during this time when you're making that kind of money, did you ever get caught? Did you do time? Did you ever get in trouble or no?
I had 3 state cases and 3 federal cases. I was a revolutionary. Every time they locked me up, I was back the next day doing business.
Got it.
I was just a defiant sort of a guy. And I did time. The last case was a federal case. I had a federal case in Washington, D.C. You'll get a kick out of this one. The name of the judge was Harold Green. Harold Green was the guy that broke up the AT&T monopoly, and he had the Iran-Contra affair. He was the judge in that.
Wow.
So he was my judge. I get locked up with an old-time mob guy by the name of Joe the Possum Nesline, right? For promoting slot machines. Joe was probably a little bit senile at the time. He introduced me to an undercover FBI agent. And I'm going all over Washington, D.C. and going to black locations. Come on, bro. I'm going to put my machine in. He said, okay, Pop, I'm going to argue with you. You look like you with the man. I said, now, of course I'm with the man. You're putting machines. I'm going to put machines here, put machines there. Meantime, this FBI agent's all wired up. I get locked up. All right. Harold Green is the judge, and the prosecutor is a young Jewish woman. I'm being real kind about it. She falls in love with me. All right. She's enchanted with me. And if she ain't going to screw me one way, she's going to screw me the other way. She says, you're the Meyer Lansky of our time. And you know what? I'm going to prosecute you. I'm going to get... So my cousin was my lawyer, and he says to me, we had a plea bargain. There was no way I was going to win this particular case. The FBI had me under... my kid cousin says to me, get in touch with your friend Simon Wiesenthal, the Nazi hunter. So I contact Dr. Wiesenthal. He says, I'm in trouble. He says, what do you need? I said, I need a letter. He said, no problem. He writes a letter to Judge Green. And he says, this is the man that helps me pursue Nazi war criminals in South America. Right? He's my man. It's in my book, the letter that Wiesenthal writes to Judge Green. Judge Green turns out that he is an escapee from Nazi Germany. He was a Kennedy Democratic Party appointee.
Interesting.
Right? So he gets the letter from Simon Wiesenthal and calls this girl. I don't want to hurt her feelings or damage her terrible reputation any worse than it already is. And he says, lady, what am I going to do with this letter? She says, the letter is false. So it's counterfeit. She said, go prove it. Anyways, to make a long story short, she runs back in, spoke to somebody. She said, how do I know it was Simon Wiesenthal? The judge says, get the hell out of here. You called him or he called you? She says, no, I called. Get out. Get out. That letter's authentic. All right. Day of sentencing, as we plea bargain, the door opens in the chambers of the court. And there's a girl comes out and she's smiling at me. My kid cousin says to me, he says, cuz, you know that girl over there? She's smiling. I says, listen, cuz, that's not unusual. I get smiled at all the time by young, pretty women. Anyways, go in front of the judge. And in my sentencing report, it says, Mr. Sugerman is a close, intimate associate of Vincent Jimmy Blue Eyes Alloy. My kid cousin says to me, cuz, you really know Jimmy Blue Eyes? I never met the man in my life. He says, but it says, cuz, I'm telling you, I never met Jimmy Blue Eyes. All right. So this prosecutor, she says to Judge Green, she says, the Judge Green says, by the mere mention of a few Italian-sounding names, the government has failed to convince this courtroom that Mr. Sugerman is a member of organized crime. Anyways, he gives me 5 years probation. Right? 2 weeks later, I get a phone call. Billy Kane, it's Memorial Day weekend, 1987. Meet me at the Bayway Diner in Elizabeth. I meet him at the Bayway Diner. So that pretty little girl was my half-sister. She was Judge Green's. Billy Kane worked for the Gambino brothers on 18th Avenue fixing their slot machines. He liked me. He says, tell his sister, you tell Judge Green, he's such a good guy, this Myron. He teaches all the slot machine operators how to rig slot machines so that the jackpots never
So the jackpots never what?
Never pay out. So, anyways, a few years later, I'm in a Gaslight restaurant, a Chinese restaurant in Miami Beach. It was the gallows Chinese girl from Elizabeth, New Jersey, Christine Lee, showing the place. And I'm there with all the old timers. And so one of the people tells me, look at that. Who's at the table there? I don't know who it is. You don't know who that is? Jimmy Blue Eyes. Jimmy Blue Eyes. Interesting. Now, come on. He knew your father. Let's go over. I'll introduce you. Let him. He's with a woman. Let him enjoy his dinner. So about 2 more years later, a fellow, very good guy, Robbie Margolis says, Myron, meet me at the Hilton Hotel. We're going to have lunch today with Jimmy Blue Eyes. I said, fine. Now he's late. He doesn't. Robbie goes downstairs to make a phone call from the phone booth. Who walks in? Jimmy Blue Eyes. I run over. Jimmy, how are you? He said, who the fuck are you? I said, Jimmy, what do you mean, who are we? I'm your close, intimate associate. He says to me, are you fucking drunk? I never met you in my life. And then I told him the story about how on the sentencing report, it says that Myron Sugerman is a close, intimate associate of Jimmy Blue Eyes. Listen, the government does what it's got to do, and we have to do what we got to do, and that's life. And you take it with a grain of salt.
Your experience, who was dirtier over the years, the government or the mobsters, the gangsters?
Both.
Who was more creative?
Gangsters. What you can learn from an old gangster, you can never learn if you went to Harvard, Princeton, Pennsylvania University, Wharton School of Business, and so forth. There was an old-timer by the name of Jake Mohawk from Newark, a bookmaker, and he used to say, you see these guys over here? They didn't even graduate 6th grade. And they have the ability to sit down, all right, and negotiate a peace agreement. You have these geniuses that go to the best universities, Georgetown University, go this one, School of Diplomacy, and they can't do shit. He says, isn't it amazing? These old timers, without any education whatsoever, can sit down and come to an agreement, shake hands on it, and that handshake is worth more than all the papers on the face of the earth made by the greatest lawyers. So from that particular point of view, it's quite a story. I mean, I went to many, many sit-downs, and of course, it's very interesting. I was with a guy, my grandson that I call Louis Streaky, that's the guy I was with, from Paterson, New Jersey. Super professional. So when we used to have a sit-down, dispute over territories and so forth, it was wonderful. You could not have a discussion until you had your bowl of pasta, your bread, your olive oil, your olives, and then your wine, and then your espresso coffee. And in the process of that hour and a half before you would start talking business, what would you talk about? Well, we talk about baseball, you talk about broads, you talk about boxers, you talk about prize fighters. You would talk about nothing that we were ready to talk about. Now, when the plates were cleaned and the waiters took away everything, then starts the procedures. Right? And it went like this. Gentlemen, remember, we're not lawyers. All right? If it can be said in 10 words, don't use 11. Number 2, they put erasers on the back of pencils for the purpose of erasing a mistake. Number 3, what can never be erased is a lie. Do I make myself clear? Gentlemen, let the proceedings begin. You brought the beef against this guy, you go first. And these old-timers, they knew how. They were great to watch them and to negotiate back and forth and so forth and so forth. And at the end, everybody, I had a major sit down 2 times. And the last time was with, each time was with a fellow by the name of Jimmy Brown. Jimmy Fiala, that was the acting boss of Gambino after John Gotti went to jail.
Got it.
Right? He was fabulous. He was on the other side. He was Gambino. I love that old man. At the end, I said something that struck a real positive chord with him. I told this guy, anytime you need my mechanics, you call me before you take them on your own. Right? Jimmy Fiala, he says, he turns to his guy and he says, I like this fucking Jew, all right? He's a smart fucking kid. And then he turns to me, so what do you want, kid? What can I do for you? I says, well, you know, Mr. Brown, don't call me Mr. Brown, you call me Jimmy. I said, you're smoking some nice cigars today. He says, you like them, huh? Here you go, kid. He grabs a bunch of cigars and he tells Louis Red, you're lucky you got this kid. This kid is good. He's good. He's good. Because I wasn't greedy. And I understood the rules, the regulations, and so forth. And life is very fascinating in that world. You have to be super honest. There's an old song that was what was the kid from Minnesota, Jewish kid, that Zimmerman. I can't even. Bob Dylan had a song.
Yeah.
Where the words were, "If you're going to be out, you're going to live outside the law. You better be honest." And that's the rules as far as life is concerned within that world. Now, is there treachery? Is there deceit? Is there breaking of honor and so forth? Yeah. It's human. It's all part of the human process. So, you asked the question, as far as the government is concerned, they got all the power, all the time, all the power, all the strength, all the witnesses and so forth. So that when a guy would go to trial, all right, he was dead. He had a 3% chance of winning. It's 97% chance that the government's going to win in the trial. So that's why the plea bargain. Everybody plea bargains.
That's a casino. That's a good odds on your end. The house wins. 97-3.
They got it all.
Yeah.
They have it all. And if they don't have it, it's just like that, like the sentence report.
Yeah, let's go back. I got a few things I want to cover with you, and we'll wrap up here shortly. So going back to the most powerful Jewish gangsters of all time. So if you ask the average person, they're going to say who? Meyer Lansky is going to come up. Lepke is going to come up, who made a lot of money in racketeering, what he was doing, but he was a family man. He rarely drank, didn't do drugs. He was a guy that was, pretty steady. And then you go hear about Ben Siegel, strong hitman, tough guy, good looking, good with the ladies. Virginia Hill kind of, caused the fall for him. Who else would you put on the list of the most powerful Jewish mobsters of all time, and what did each of them have that was unique compared to their peers?
So there is no Jewish gangster anymore. So I am the tail end, because a real Jewish gangster on that level, they were also patriots, American patriots and Jewish patriots. It wasn't just a question of money. Meyer Lansky, for example, Longie's Willman, they fought the American Nazi Party. They cooperated with the United States government in Operation Underworld in World War II. And they supplied weapons and arms to Haganah and to Irgun to help create the state of Israel post-World War II, pre-state in Palestine, pre-state Israel. That's the reason why I was involved deeply with Simon Wiesenthal, so that I could do my share of, let's say, participation as far as Jewish, above and beyond. So it wasn't just a question that they were protecting the neighborhood or protecting the Jewish community and so forth. It went beyond that. There was a tremendous amount of patriotism that was not, people are going to watch this and say, oh, kind of patriots, and they were gangsters, they were this. There's a Talmudic wisdom that says life is not either black and it's neither white. It's all shades of gray. And everything as far as life is concerned, there's no way that you're going to have it specifically black and specifically white. You're going to have it of all different shades. That's the human existence. You want perfect truth? When we go up to heaven, that's perfect truth. When you die and you close out.
Great, a lot of great. I've spoken to Sammy, and we've had him on, and we've done a lot of different things together with our interviews. And now he's got his own channel. He's doing stuff. Michael Francis, Collada, Phil Leonetti, Ralph Natali, Oscar Goodman, a lot of these different personalities. Did you ever have any dealings yourself with Gotti or Sammy Gravano yourself, or no?
Sammy would remember me. We met at a big sit down, and it was an Italian restaurant. I think it was called the Sicilian on 2nd Avenue and 19th. It was funny. It was it was completely closed off that day. It was like it took me 4 cars. Drivers changed cars. So that by the time we got to the place, everybody in the place was a gangster, right? And Sammy the Bull was the moderator that day. And I was brought there because there was going to be a major combination of the Genovese and the Gambino family. They're going to put together a slot machine operation, 2,000 machines. And I was asked the question if I would be able to organize and administrate it. And I said, at the risk of sounding immodest, I'm the only one that could do something like that. Louis read the buttons are popping off his shirt. Says, that's my man. That's my man. Jimmy Brown says, I told you that kid is good. So Sammy the Bull, I met him. On all of your interviews, it's very impressive. All of them, most of these, all that I've watched, these guys are very candid. They're very, very honest about their feelings, sentiments, and so forth and so forth. It's very, very, you're good. You're good. You bring out the best of these guys as far as honesty is concerned.
I appreciate that. What was the biggest thing you noticed from Sammy? When you said he was a moderator, did he use humor? Did he have presence? Was it intense? Was it calm? What was his approach when you saw him?
Low key.
Low key.
Low key, yeah. Okay. Low key. There was nothing ostentatious about the man. He just was strictly business. Gentlemen, we're here. What's this with slot machines? Who's this one guy? This issue of garbage, issue over this, issue over that, and so forth and so on. So it was basically, again, you were sitting at your table, your Genovese table, and other guys would be sitting at Gambino table. And whatever the issue was, ours was slot machines, so you get called to the table. And Sammy was strictly a moderator, strictly.
Was he a feared guy at that time? Did people fear him?
I was told by my driver, by Louis Red's driver that took me there. He says, this guy's dynamite. That was the expression he used. He says, this guy is dynamite, referring to Sammy. Sammy's from Gambino. He's not from Genovese. My guy tells me that guy is dynamite. That's the only experience I had as far as he's concerned. I knew all the you had Ralph and Natalie. You had Tommy Leonetti.
Phil Leonetti?
What's his first name?
Michael?
Michael.
Francis?
No, Leonetti.
Oh, Phil Leonetti.
Okay. So the Philadelphia crowd, there was a crew in Jersey, in Newark. It was down neck Newark. And the guy that was in charge was Tony Bananas. Now, they talked about him killing Angelo Bruno. Mm-hmm. So his name was Tony Bananas Caponegro. I knew everybody from Newark because I'm from Newark. So I knew that whole crew. I knew a zillion guys. Or vice versa. They knew me because guys that heard about the gambling machine business, they jumped on it. So we had everybody from every crew, from every street corner throughout the entire city of New York, suburbs, and so forth and so forth. It was a huge, huge, huge business that I created.
And this is still in the 80s, 77 on.
It went from 77 and then till I got locked up in 95. I went to jail in 95.
95. So that's about the I think Natalie, did you have any dealings with Joe Merlino or no?
No. My connection was with Newark, with the Philadelphia Angelo Bruno's outfit in Newark. The guy that killed him was Tony. He was the capo regime. He was the guy that was in charge of Newark.
And never anything with Scarfo?
I met him one time. He was eating in a restaurant, and one of the kids from Newark said, "Gee, I'd like you to meet Nicky Scarfo."
Did you get the feeling from did you feel?
No, I didn't have any.
Okay,
no.
So you didn't have any kind of opinion about. Okay,
the guys that were extremely, extremely close, that I was close with, was all the way upstairs on top. Jerry Katina from Newark was my father's partner in the jukebox vending business. Doc Stacho, Longies Willman, Meyer Lansky. Those people I knew.
Those were okay. So how was Meyer when you met him? What was Meyer like?
A gem, a gentleman, and so forth. But that time, he had run away and met him in Israel. My father's partner, Doc Stature,
What year was this when you met him?
1970.
Is
September
this
1970.
when he wanted to get citizenship, but they turned him down and didn't give it to him? Is that the time?
Yeah.
Or? Okay.
Yeah. He went. He knew he was going to be indicted. He ran to Israel. My father's original partner, was Joseph Doc Stature. Doc Stature was he was a genius. Absolutely, what a mind. But Doc Stature accepted exile from the United States in a deal that he worked out with Edward Bennett Williams, the great lawyer from Washington, and Robert Kennedy. He actually made the deal with Kennedy to accept exile from the United States. He was in Israel. He told me on one Saturday afternoon, or Saturday morning, you'll be here for lunch, for Shabbat. And he never told me why. And all of a sudden, Meyer Lansky walked in. Meyer Lansky sat down next to me. I was a kid. I was going to go to Africa the next month to run slot machines for a backdoor ballet deal in Lagos, Nigeria, with a couple of Arab gangsters, and they needed a manager. So Meyer Lansky, they were very polite, very cordial, and he tells me, listen, son, he says, they made me bigger than Al Capone. That's why I'm here in Israel. Because if I go to trial, I'm going to do life. And all it was just a income tax case. At the end of the meal, by the way, he says, your father was my very, very dear friend. He was with us in the Riviera Hotel in Havana. He reminded me of my father. Same style, low-key, quiet, gentleman. They took me off to the corner, and they were concerned at that particular point about Mr. Katina, who was my father's partner that bought out Doc Stature after Doc went to L.A. He opened up the Moulin Rouge, and then he was at the Hotel Flamingo and Sands and so forth and so forth. They were concerned about Jerry Katina, right? It took me years later to figure out all of the concerns. It was all about the rake-off. Who's in charge of the rake-off? Because once Meyer Lansky left Florida to go to Israel, who was in charge of the money coming into? We used to go to Miami. Meyer would have it packaged up, and it would be picked up by a fellow by the name of Sylvain Fetterman from Geneva, Switzerland, who was, I think, somehow or another related to Tibor Rosenbaum, who was the owner of a bank called the International Banque de Crédit, which was the bank that banked both the rake-off for the mob and was a Mossad bank. It worked both for both organizations.
Interesting. Now, Lansky's strength, when you hear about Lansky's strength, you hear a lot of different things. The whole scene you see in the movie Mobsters with Christian Slater where, Meyer wouldn't take, he would always fight back. He didn't know how to fight, but he was feisty. He was willing to fight. He was not afraid of you. And then he's portrayed as a guy that's very methodical, very business, very strong, but, low-key, didn't need the attention. He was what else would you say was some of his strengths? I mean, I'm sure your dad told you stories about Meyer, who he probably had more dealings with him.
So Meyer Lansky used to come to Newark all the time.
Yeah.
And stayed at the old Riviera Hotel. There was a Riviera Hotel actually on Clinton Avenue. And he was just a low-key guy, all right? Dressed conservative, thought conservative. And he was a patriotic American and a patriotic Jew. Very strong on the question of Jewish identity. In terms of theology, whether he believed in God, probably not. He wasn't a practicing Jew. He was a nationalistic Jew. All those guys participated in supply of weapons and arms at a time that the Neutrality Act was invoked by Truman, stating that it was a criminal act to supply weapons and arms to Palestine, either to the Arabs or to the Jews. Our guys played a significant role in buying up weapons and arms surplus weapons and arms post-World War II. And we had all the shipping connections at the port of New York through Frank Costello and Albert Anastasia, so that the longshoremen cooperated with the Jews, with the Zionists, to ship weapons and arms. Meyer Lansky and Longy Swillman played significant roles. They went out of their way constantly. So the value system of these people, Meyer Lansky would not be in the dirty business. The dirty business being prostitution or drugs.
Who was? If he wasn't, who was?
Just about everybody.
Really?
It was
Even his colleagues, even the different families.
Yeah. And my guy was Louis Streaky, and he used to say every week, we'd meet at a delicatessen called Carpin's in Passaic. It'd be a round table, and everybody was at the table. And his message is, gentlemen, we're not in that business, all right? Gentlemen, we're not in that business, and gentlemen, we're not in that business. I think everybody at the table was at that business except myself.
Got it.
In some form or another, Patrick comes to me and says to me, or I'm not saying Patrick, I'm saying, let's say, Mr. John Smith comes to me and says to me, finance me, give me $25,000, all right? Don't ask any questions. You'll have back 50% on your money in 30 days, all right? Please don't ask me who, what, when, where, how. So everybody, in some form or another, was connected to that business.
Who trusted who? Like how much of a role did trust play, or how much of a role did intuition play? Like what, the main gangsters who are sitting there sometimes saying, I know this guy's full of shit, he's lying to me to my face, but I still have to figure out a way to do business with him. What mattered more? Trust, intuition, street smart? How would you put it?
Combination of all factors.
Okay.
A combination of all factors. All your interviews, your guys tell you, trust nobody. That was a common thread through all your interviews with the fellas that we mentioned before. It's very difficult to trust in that world. Somebody says, what is the definition of the word friend? All right? Friend is a sacred word. We got two guys. I'm going to take this bottle of water. I'm going to take this bottle of water. I'm one guy, and my best friend is this guy, all right? We get nailed. We get brought down to police headquarters, all right? They put me in one room, and they put my best friend in another room. And then they say to me, Sugerman, that guy over there, Moishe's your best friend. I say, he's a great guy. Well, that great guy is talking. He's got diarrhea of the mouth. He's burying you. So, you know what? You better be a smart guy. You better bury him before he buries you. And if I'm smart, I'll say to him, gentlemen, kishmir toches, which in translated Yiddish means kiss my ass. And if my friend Moshe is really my friend, he says kishmir toches, right? That's the definition of friendship. All the rest is all bullshit. Guys hug, kiss, embrace, going to have espresso coffee, we're going to have a drink together, and so forth and so forth. And then what happens when your best friend says to you, come on, we're going to take a ride tonight, we're going to see somebody, all right? And he's walking you right into your death. Michael Francis, it tells that story, how scared he was to go anywhere and so forth and so on. He knows. A very smart guy, very, very, very talented, very interesting, very, very interesting. And he tells exactly the way it is. So the other factor that you didn't mention, you mentioned intuition, you mentioned smarts and trust and all that. Providence.
Elaborate.
Providence, God. Sometimes in life, we don't know where it's coming from, all right? It's saved because I had an attempt on my life one time, two times. The second time was by Providence, but my guy that I was supposed to meet in the morning, who never was on time, that particular morning was on time, and he spotted two guys that were dressed in uniform, long coats, caps, and sure enough, the guy shot up the stairs, and the truth of the matter was, why was he there that particular morning, 364 days a year, never on time? This particular day, he was there on time and was experienced enough to say, those two guys, they're here to do you more than just harm.
Providence. So trust, intuition, street, and on top of that, providence. In the mob world, when you think about the Jewish mob, you think about, the Italian mob. What good did the mob do, and what bad did the mob do? Obviously, when you think about the bad, we know a lot of the bad. We read a lot about the bad. But there's those that also will say it did some good. What would you say the good it did to the community?
Well, on the local level, if you look at somebody tried to rape my sister, as an example. Thank God it didn't happen. But let's say, for example, my father, I can't even begin to tell you how many times Sugie was called in the middle of the night. Sugie, can I come see you? I got a problem. Such and such, the union, this, that, and so forth and so forth. So my father was with Jerry Katina. So next day, my aunt, here's a good story. My Aunt Shirley, my mother's sister, she becomes a widow and she's got a supermarket up in Boundbrook, New Jersey. Couple of tough guys come in, bully her, and Mrs. Goldberg, you're going to do this, that. And she got scared. She called my mother. Mother calls me. My father was already passed away, and she says, take care of that. All right. So I go to see Abe Green. Abe sat there. He said, tell Aunt Shirley to come. Comes to the office. And she tells him the problem, that he got bullied, this, that, and their union. Abe says, what? Nice seeing you, Shirley. Take care of yourself, sweetheart. Aunt Shirley says to me, no, what's going on here? And he says, go home. What do you mean go home? I came here to get the thing resolved. Aunt Shirley, go home. Sure enough, the next morning, she couldn't walk into her supermarket. It looked like a flower shop. There were bouquets and all of a sudden, baskets of fruit and this, that, and so forth. And two guys show up with the hats. And Mrs. Goldberg, we never knew who you were. We apologize. And if you ever need anything, you come to see us and so forth and so forth. That's a million times that story of you went to the powers to be, because if you went through the system did shit for you. Somebody tried to rape the guy's sister, all right? And he goes to the bosses. Bosses say, he'll take care of that. And sure enough, in the old days, that guy that was an attempted rapist, he never see him again, all right? It was taken care of. Now, if you went through the system and the prosecution, the lawyers, and this, that, and so, it's an expediency. You get justice, instant justice, providing, of course, and they bring that out in the movie The Godfather, which was very accurate, to show that you get expediency as far as the justice is concerned. Whereas if you go civil cases, you want to sue a guy, all right? Guy screwed you for money. You're going to go sue him. How many years is it going to take before you lose the case?
2 to 4 years.
With luck, you get 2 to 4 years.
Yeah.
All right. You're unlucky. You might be 10 years waiting for a resolution because it's going through the system. So you asked an excellent question. The benefit of the mob is that it cuts through all the bullshit, gets right down to the basics.
What's the ugly? I mean, I've read, I've seen, I've interviewed, I've done a lot of research on that. What was the ugliest part?
Can I tell you who the biggest organized crime is in the entire world?
Who?
The government. Every government is the worst organized criminal enterprise on the face of the earth. These guys here, they're midgets compared to the government. Except that the government, the government made me, he's the boss of the slot machine business, all right? Sugerman, he's the boss of the slot machine business. Right? Terrible thing. Oh my God, he's organized crime. He play his slot machines. You're funding organized crime. Okay, good. Turn on your television set and you watch on television. All right, guys playing in their living room on a computer, the same slot machines that Myron Sugerman operated in bodegas 20 years ago. All right, but now you can sit in your living room and you can go broke playing the same slot machines that Myron Sugerman. But this is good because this is government, and then we're going to have taxes, and the taxes are going to be good. It's going to help people and so forth and so on. Atlantic City is still a shit house after all those years from 1978 that all that money that's going to be used for the benefit of blah, 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 blah. It's all bullshit. Government is your biggest criminal organization on the face of the earth, but it's a necessary evil, all right? Many years ago, my father's partner, and I explained to you that bought out Doc Statcher, become the acting boss of the Genovese crime family, Jerry Katina. Underrated, understated, the most brilliant man, one of the most brilliant men I ever met in my life. And at desks like this, he would be sitting reading the Manchester Guardian, the Christian Science Monitor, the Wall Street Journal, and New York Times. Self-educated man. My father used to say, Mr. Katina, he could run the Pentagon or General Electric. And with the passing of years, I come to the conclusion that man could have been the President of the United States of America. He had such a skill in administrating of people, talent, and intuition and instinct, the genius about himself, all right? At the party in 1991, September 13th, 1991, I'm at Al Maniaci's home in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, for his wife's 70th birthday. Very dear friend of my father's and mother's. And he tells me, the old man wants you to be at the party tonight. And I'm honored. And of course, when Mr. Katina walks in, everybody goes, oh, Jerry, how are you? It's good to see you. He says to me, get over here, sit down. And then he, of course, he's super comfortable with me because he can talk to me like he can talk to nobody else. And then he says to me, I was just another chief operating officer of just another corporation. And I never forgot those words, right? I was just another chief operating officer.
Makes sense.
Of course it made sense.
Makes sense.
All right? Kept peace, resolved problems, labor, unions,
recruiting,
made everything work, made it all work.
So it's so interesting when you, which one of the five families was the best tightly ran, money-making, feared? Which of the five was that?
Well, at different intervals, it depended upon the leadership. For example, Mr. Katina, my goodness gracious, that man, he could have easily been the President of the United States of America. The Bally deal, okay, Bally Manufacturing, Bally Slot Machine, Bally hotels and so forth. Okay. My father's company, Runyon Sales Company, was the official distributor for Bally Manufacturing Company before the slot machine business. They made slots before the war, but my father's company becomes the distributors for Bally in 1946. And they made a machine called the Bally Bingo. It was a subterfuge gambling device, looked like a pinball machine. It was a phenomenal machine.
Bally Bingo.
Bally Bingo pinball. That machine looked like it had a hand that came out of the machine and grabbed the money out of your pocket.
Interesting.
It was the most seductive piece of equipment on the face of the earth. All right. Robert Kennedy knocks it out in 1992. All right. He says that machine is the same thing as a slot machine, and he makes it amends what was known as the Johnson Act, passes a law called the Eastland Act 1963, stating that a Bally Bingo machine, multiple coin slot pinball machine, is a gambling device and cannot be shipped interstate. Right? And knocks Bally out of the box. Bally goes into foreclosure. The manager of that company was Bill O'Donnell. The original owner was Ray Maloney. Brilliant man. And the new manager, or the manager that ran the company, was Bill O'Donnell. The Maloney family was no longer involved with the business. They come up with a hopper. Somebody invents a hopper system that takes a slot machine from a mechanical device that only pays out 20 coins, and it's going to put in a hopper system that's going to spit out hundreds of coins, thousands of coins. In fact, it's going to spit out eventually dollars and something. Okay. Bill O'Donnell calls my father. He says, Sugie, could you introduce me to Bill O'Donnell? He says, sure. Could you introduce me to Jerry Katina? My father says to Jerry Katina, Bill O'Donnell from Valley. You never met him. He wants to talk. He's got a proposition. So tell him to come out. Comes and he sits in the office in Springfield, New Jersey. In a matter of 2.5, 3 hours, Jerry Katina hammers a deal where they take the company out of foreclosure, all right, and goes on to be Valley Manufacturing Company. Jerry Katina, the machine was so great, all right. Jerry Katina understood in a matter of seconds that this was going to revolutionize the slot machine business. He calls the people from Emprise in Buffalo, which was a Jewish family that owned all the baseball concessions and so forth. He gets money from them. He calls Sam Klein in Cleveland, Ohio, big cigarette machine operator, smart businessman. He had that kind of connection that he could call people around the country and hammer a deal together. It took 2 hours to hammer the deal, get the money up, take the factory out of foreclosure, and become Valley Manufacturing Company. Then he calls up his friend Dean Martin in Vegas, and he says, I'm sending you Abe Green. Introduce him to all the hotel owners. And that's how Valley machines get tested. And in a matter of, they own 95% of the slot machine business in Las Vegas, Nevada, for years and years and years and years. Right? So when you talk to me about which crew, Jerry Katina was a phenomenal. Now you had some guys that were just Paul Castellano, really. Well, Sammy the Bull told you. The man should not have been a mob boss. He distanced himself. He was too legitimate. He was making money too legitimately, and he didn't have that human touch. The guy that should have been was O'Neill. It should have been, according to Sammy the Bull and John Gotti, was the guy that really should have been. But again, Carlo Gambino was genius. From what I was told as far as the streets are concerned. You have to have leadership quality to be a boss, to be a mob boss.
Did you ever do anything with Sonny Francis or no?
No.
Nothing with Sonny?
No.
And did you ever think that Sammy could have one day been a boss or no? You saw Sammy as an underboss to Gotti and that was the relationship they had?
I don't think I had enough experience with him in order to make that judgment.
Okay, fair enough.
If I trudged everybody against Jerry Katina, nobody was qualified.
Jerry Katina, you put him at the top. So Jerry's your GOAT. Jerry's the greatest boss you've ever seen.
He was superb.
Okay.
Superb. Discipline. We called him an iron fist and a silk glove.
Was he more a mobster, an earner, a leader? What was he?
Everything.
Oh,
he was no mobster.
So he wasn't the one that was going out taking people out?
But maybe in his youth, for sure.
Okay.
Nobody fooled him. But I used to see Manchester Guardian, Christian Science Monitor, and so forth.
Yeah.
Self-educated man, tremendous contacts throughout the entire United States. He rose up the ladder as far as success is concerned. Suit, tie, and acted accordingly. All right, a gentleman. There was no such thing as you couldn't. If you had a legitimate need, you were a good guy. You went to him for a favor, or through the ranks, you got the favor done.
Again, I'm going to ask you one question. I'm curious to know if you have any other kind of version of story to this. John F. Kennedy assassination. I've heard I've interviewed 20 people on the topic of John F. JFK assassination. What do you know? The involvement of Ruby, the mob, the CIA, LBJ. What do you know?
So Jimmy Blue Eyes tells me this story.
Okay.
I used to meet with him once a month downstairs in the Hilton Hotel. So I said to him one time, I said, Jimmy, this kid, Harvey Oswald, He says, we have better fucking shooters than Lee Harvey Oswald. It's all bullshit. We had nothing to do with him. I says, but tell me the story. He says, okay. Joe Kennedy, all right? Joe Kennedy, the nicest thing you could have said about Joe Kennedy is that he hated Italians more than he hated Jews. Couldn't stand Italians. He couldn't stand Jews. So he wanted Jack Kennedy to become president. All right? He reaches out to Peter Lawford, his son-in-law. You were friendly with that little skinny guinea Frank Sinatra. We need a favor. What's the favor? You go to him. You're part of the Rat Pack. Tell him we need Cook County, Chicago. We need West Virginia, the unions, in order to get Kennedy elected. Chicago.
Dewey?
No. Dewey was New York, the prosecutor. No, the Irish, Daly. Richard Daly, Irish Catholic Democrat, Sam Mooney, all right? They get together. We're going to get this guy elected, all right? Now, he gets elected, all right? Here's the mentality. You came to me for a favor? Your man got elected? It was me that got him elected. Tu capisci? Questa è un'oma nostra. Our guy got him elected. Oh, we got a claim on you. You owe us big time. Joe Kennedy says, what's happening? He said, well, these Italians are, by the way, you fuck with these Italians. You got a girlfriend by the name of Judith Ethner Campbell. She's between you and Sam Moody. You're sharing a girlfriend. You're sending messages to him. He's sending messages to you. Quit that shit. Where's your brother Robert? Come here, Bobby. You're going to be the United States Attorney General, all right? Because you're mean and vicious like the old man. Your brother Jack, all he wants to do is screw everybody, all right? So you're going to get rid of these Italians because they are a pain in the ass. They're a pain in my Irish ass. Okay. He opens up the crime, passes a bill called the Omnibus, which is the preface to the eventual law called the RICO. All right. He has a department within the United States Department of Justice, anti-mafia. All right. It starts with Robert Kennedy. Now, in the mind of the Italians, they say, wait a minute, wait, what are you doing here? We got you elected, now you're going to go after us, you son of a bitch, you Kennedy bastards. I told you never could trust an Irishman. That Irish son of a bitch, and so forth and so forth. Now, I used to go to Dallas, Texas, to buy pinball machines from an old friend of my dad by the name of Abe Sussman. Oh, and Abe was the connection Jew in Dallas. So Dallas always answered to Chicago. Everybody, that crew in Dallas, everything west of up until Vegas. Vegas was open.
Jackson, Chicago.
Answered to Chicago.
Makes sense, yeah.
Yeah. So if some Jew from Chicago got himself jammed up in Dallas, they used to call Abe and say, Abe, we got one of your Jews here.
Got it.
Get him on an airplane. Get him the hell out of here.
Yeah.
All right. That was the system in Dallas, Texas. And that explains how Jack Ruby, was in the Dallas Police Department because he used to buy coffee, hang around. He was low level, but he was a low level Jewish gangster from Chicago. All right. Now, it raises the whole question. What the hell was Jack Ruby doing in the Dallas Police Department and killing Lee Harvey Oswald? So, where it concerns legends and myths, all right, we'll sit here from now until the cows come home because the same stories over and over. Who killed Logie's Willman? Who killed this one? Who killed that one? And so forth. Who killed Marilyn Monroe? If you weren't there, if you weren't involved in a hit, you don't know. By the way, Carlo Gambino was very smart. He used to send 2 guys to kill and 2 guys to do the burial. Why? So the 2 guys that killed never knew where the body was.
Yeah. So the 2 guys who killed never knew where the body was?
Right.
What?
I'm going to send you to do the killing, and I'm going to send him over here to do the burying. So that you can never say, I'll take you where the body is.
You brought the body to him. He took the body and buried it.
Yeah.
So he knows you killed them, but you don't know.
No, he don't know that. He don't know that. You go to such and such a destination, pick up a body and bury it.
Okay. But he doesn't know who killed them.
Of course not. All right.
Why was that? What was he doing that? Is it too...
Because without knowledge of the body, there's
no one's ever going to know.
There's no crime. No body, no crime.
So meaning no one really knows what happened. I mean, there's all these stories.
So that was exactly. It's all speculation. But Abe Sussman, the old friend of my dad's, told me that Jack Ruby was just a knockaround guy that ran a few strip clubs in Dallas, Texas. Right? But he was close enough in the police. What police department has a schmegegi like Jack Ruby hanging in his place with a pistol? So that of course added fuel to the.
Any unique story you heard about Hoffa? Again, I've heard many of them. Is there any unique story you have on Hoffa?
Too many stories. So the movie.
Meaning who killed him? Meaning who killed Hoffa? No. Okay.
No. Yeah. But I did go to see a hitman by the name of Heshy K.O. Koningsberg, Harold K.O. Koningsberg. He was up in Attica. He was in his 46th year when I went up to see him. Right? And I asked him, I says, because he was a known killer, stone cold killer. Did you have anything to do with
Hoffa?
Hoffa. None of your fucking business. I said, okay, I'm sorry, Heshy. He says, but I will tell you something. He says, I'm the guy that was involved in supplying weapons and arms to Israel. And I'm here with a journalist by name, an award-winning journalist by name is David Samuels. All right, this is a cute story. So Heshy, he's there 46 years. He says to me, I'm the guy that told Mushy Diane. I says, Mushy, we're on a boat in Marseille, France, all right? And there's going to be guns and weapons. I'm going to just give this to Haganah. I'm going to give this to Ergun, and I'm giving this to the Stern Gang, all right? And if you say one fucking word, I'm going to blow your balls off. Do you understand? And he says, years later, 1940, 1950s, he says, years later, this was in 1947, and he says in 1947, what the hell was it? Oh, in 1947, 48, he says, I run into Jabotinsky, the father of the revisionist Zionist movement, and he pinches me on my chin and he tells me, good fucking job. Good job, Harold. Good job. Terrific. And I says to David Samuels, don't you say a fucking word. Jabotinsky died in 1970. So guys would put themselves in situations that I was here, I was there, I was this, I was that, and so forth and so forth. Too many stories.
So maybe Michael is right when he said he can't trust anyone in that world. Michael,
he was brilliant.
Yeah.
Michael's interview, genius.
Yeah. Michael is he may be one of the best communicators in the marketplace.
He's unique. He's very, very unique
in his own way. Yeah, very unique. Well, listen, I really enjoyed it. I'm so glad you made it out here. And I know, the occasion, it kind of worked out for everybody. We have a legendary person here with us as well, Streaky, that's sitting to my right, to your left.
And my grandson.
Yes, but I really enjoyed talking to you. I appreciate you for coming out. Folks, if you're watching this, we're going to put the link below. We're going to put the link below to Myron's book, The Chronicles of the Last Jewish Gangster, From Meyer to Myron. The link will be below to order on Amazon. And with that being said, thanks for coming out. Appreciate you once again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
It was nice. And I watched all your videos, and I got that phone call the other day. I said to myself, Wow, I'm going to be a superstar. I'm going to have groupies. I'm going to have women who want to take selfies with me.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness gracious.
You're no longer going to need Tinder just because of Valuetainment.
Oh, I'm going to have to walk around with bigger than my cane's not going to be big enough.
No more swipe rights. I just want you to have no more swipe right for your grandpa.
I'm going to have to walk around with a baseball bat to protect myself. All those women. Thank you, Patrick.
I appreciate that.
Nice
Thank
meeting
you. Pleasure. Thank you.
Jewish mob, huh? Complete different story and angle about what he had to say about the history of Jewish mob, how powerful they were before. 25% of inmates. Very interesting history of the Jewish mob that Myron shared with us. If you enjoyed this interview, I'm curious to know your thoughts. Comment below. Put a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. And last but not least, 2 other interviews I want you to watch. One is with Sammy the Bull Gravano. We talked about Sammy a lot. And the other one is Phil Leonetti. He did an interview with me, and he asked for the camera to be off when I was not, to not show his face. It's a very interesting interview with Phil Leonetti, the former underboss of the Philadelphia crime family. Click over here to watch that. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.